Alberta by-elections, 3 in Calgary, 1 in Edmonton. And here to break down the latest, Graham Thompson, columnist with the Edmonton Journal. As well, Janet Brown, she's a Calgary-based public opinion consultant, and Rob Breckenridge, talk show host with News Talk 770. Good evening, folks.
Good evening.
Welcome back.
Evening.
Okay, Graham, we knew the announcement was coming. It had to come soon. Members of this panel, and I'm testing my memory here, but I believe you were one, as well as Dwayne Bratt, said there would be 4.
I thought there might be as many as 4. I didn't get the actual names of all the ridings correct.
Okay, but is it as we expected?
Yeah, well, definitely there's 2 in Calgary for sure because of the people stepping down, including Redford, and you had 2 people running down there, Prentice and Gordon Dirks. One up here was Stephen Mandel, the mayor running in Edmonton Whitemud. The surprise, I think, was having one of them, a member of the caucus step down all of a sudden, Ken Hughes. Has quit. So I think that a bit of a surprise. We expected, though, 4. It's turning into a bit of a mini referendum.
Okay, explain that.
On this. I think Prentice wants it to be about his ideas moving forward. We've seen an announcement a day for 10 days. The culmination was in the announcing the by-elections. So he wants to say, look, he won't actually say it this way, but it will be sort of suggest that this is a referendum on the things he's been doing. So give him a stamp of approval. The opposition is going to be saying, look, no, this is a referendum, but on the Redford legacy. It's not just about Redford, it's about all the PCs. It's still 57 of these people in caucus are still the people who were elected under Redford in 2012. So the opposition is going to be saying this is about saying no to the government and sending a message to Prentice.
Okay, let's bring in our pollster now. Janet, by-elections, they don't always garner a whole lot of attention, at least not on the scale or scope of a general election. But how different do you expect the situation will be this time around?
Well, this is very different. I mean, 4 by-elections is a lot for Alberta. It's not uncommon to try and have multiple by-elections on the same day, and we've often seen 4 on the same day at the federal level. But I'm not even sure how long it's been since we've had this many by-elections on one day. And then you've got a by-election for the premier. I mean, that's almost unprecedented. And then that would be exciting enough, but we've got 2 cabinet ministers looking to get elected too. So you know, Graham called this a referendum. I almost call it a mini-election. This is very exciting times. We didn't think we'd get to watch politics like this for another 2 years. So as far as the polls go, though, you know, Graham mentioned that there's 57 people in caucus who also served under Redford. Lucky for them, none of them are running in a by-election right now. Because, you know, the PCs certainly aren't doing very well in the polls, but these by-elections are so specific and by-elections are so unpredictable, I'm not sure the polls are much of a guide as to what's going to happen in these 4 by-elections. All
right, Rob, already some questions circulating about just how diverse the PC lineup is. We knew Prentice, Mandel, Dirks would be needing seats. 4th candidate, Calgary West, Mike Ellis. Your thought on how this roster plays?
Well, you know, I think there's the point, as Janet made, that these are all new candidates. They're not as tainted by the baggage of the past. But I am still a little mystified as to why we're having this by-election in Calgary West, because Ken Hughes had said that he was going to stay until the next election and he wasn't going to run again. There's probably several other Tory MLAs, I'm guessing, who are not planning to run again either, but they're not stepping down just yet. So why Ken Hughes, right? It wasn't as though he was pressured so that Prentice could run there or someone else could run there. So it is a little strange that that by-election is occurring, and I wonder if that in and of itself is going to factor in whether this candidate that they've put up in Calgary West is more vulnerable, because no one really knows who he is, and less is at stake, I guess, if voters there wanted to send a message that way. So I think that's going to be interesting. We'll find out, I believe, tomorrow who the Wildrose candidate in that riding is going to be, and you know, how seriously they're taking it, because I think they look at Elbow as winnable, and I think maybe they're going to look at Calgary West as winnable too. So that's going to be an interesting dynamic.
Graham, the Ken Hughes reference there. How much of a curveball is his?
It surprised us. You know, he's been saying for some time he's not running next election. Because he was in the leadership race and he dropped out. Then he said he wouldn't be in cabinet. He wasn't going to run again next time. And then all of a sudden he's dropped out. And we were wondering, you know, thinking about could it be 4 or 5 by-elections? This is one way for Prentice to try and bring more new people into cabinet or into caucus at the very least. We don't know if Mike Ellis is going to be in cabinet. He's a rookie. The rest all have experience when it comes to running in politics. So it's a bit of a mystery as to why this actually happened now. It does potentially give them another fresh face if they win the by-election in Calgary West. I thought it was interesting, though, you know, when you have Prentice talking about being more democratic, he's appointed all the people to run. There was no real nomination process.
Handpicked.
They're all handpicked, of course, including himself. But Ellis, he just said, "Boom, you're in. You are the candidate," and bang, is off and running. So it's interesting. On the one hand, he's saying he's been democratic, but he's appointing all the candidates to these races. Plus, of course, he appointed 2 people to cabinet, which is really unusual in provincial politics.
Okay, Wild Rose Party announcing today Kathy McDonald as the candidate to face Jim Prentice in Calgary Foothills. Janet, how much of a challenge do you feel she'll give Mr. Prentice?
Well, you know, I'm going to have to sort of learn more about her. I just heard about the announcement earlier this morning, like everybody. It is interesting, though, because she's also with the Calgary Police Services, as is Mike Ellis. So it's interesting to see sort of, you know, 2 police officers in this race running running in different ridings and running for different parties. So, you know, it's almost inconceivable that Prentice can lose, but at the same time, anything can happen in a by-election, like I said already. So, I mean, I think she's a credible, formidable candidate. The other thing is yesterday there was a little bit of criticism about the PC candidate lineup for, you know, males of a certain age. So I think the Wild Rose is trying to sort of make a statement by putting in a woman as part of their slate of candidates.
Rob, what kind of a statement do you feel it makes?
Well, I think for Prentice, you know, for him as a candidate, that he more convincingly can put forth the argument that here's what I've done so far, give me a chance, and there's going to be more of it. So I think he'll be more in a position to kind of control the narrative in that sense, and I don't think he'll be too troubled in that riding. I think he'll likely prevail. The challenge in the other ridings is what's going to be the dominant narrative. You know, let's see what else Prentice can do, or is it time to send a message to the government? And from there, I mean, what's going to motivate voters more? Voters who are angry are going to be more likely to go out and vote in a by-election versus voters who say, well, maybe this guy's not so bad. I'm curious to see what he will do. So what's going to be the strategy to get those voters out? The ones who say, well, maybe this guy's better than what we had before. I'm curious to see what he would do. How do you translate that into someone who says, absolutely, I got to make sure I get down to the voting station on that day and vote for Prentice? The wild card in a by-election is that everybody knows you're not going to change government. So everybody knows that the party that's in power will still be the party in power, and you can afford to gamble a little or send a message because you'll still be left with the same government after the fact. So those are those wild card factors that come into play here.
But if you vote against the premier, you throw the government into chaos.
Well, that works in Prentice's favor.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay,
right.
And Graham, in terms of narrative, do we expect more Prentice announcements to be trotted out, or?
No, I think we've seen the template laid out, 10 days, 10 announcements.
And it will strictly be what they announce leading up to the by-election.
It seems that way, right? This is going to be them saying, look, this is the plan. You know, we're selling off the air fleet. We're bringing in an accountability act. We'll be building schools, even if they're sort of, I guess, trailers in a field. We'll be building these mini starter schools. I think this is going to be the template moving forward. It's interesting, though, talk about throwing the government into chaos. That could be actually a positive. If people really want to send a message to the government in Calgary Foothills, where Prentice is living and running, rather, they could really throw a monkey wrench into the government by defeating him. So that's one message to send to the government, and that is blow the thing up and start over again by defeating the premier.
All right, tooth and nail. Up next, what it will take for all the opposition parties to mount a successful challenge, plus a party leader